Hi, welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman. Today I'm going to be working on a UFO project that I had started last week. My family went on vacation up to northern Minnesota. And of course, I brought my sewing machine with me. Who doesn't bring their sewing machine with them on vacation? And every morning I was able to work on this project. I'd get up early, have my devotions, and work for 3 or 4 hours on the project before everybody else was up. So I did get quite a bit accomplished. But I want to share with you today how I saw that I could take this paper piece project, this UFO project, and I was getting 2 quilts from it. I'm getting a Crumb quilt and this paper pieced quilt. So this project is one that I started probably 15 years ago. It's from Miss Rosie's Floral Quilts. This is an old leisure arts book that I've had, and I started this project many years ago. It's the missile weight pattern, and it is a paper pieced pattern. So I'm going to show you how to make the paper pieced block, and then I'm also going to show you how you use those leftover pieces that you trim away and make a crumb quilt from it. And I was really enjoying this. It was a lot of fun last week, seeing that all of that leftover parts and pieces that someone might typically throw away, but they can be used to make a crumb quilt. So here is a little snapshot of what I was able to get accomplished. The fabrics in this quilt are more of the muted, soft pastel fabric colors, which will be fun. So now I'm going to take you to the tabletop and show you how the pieces were all cut out for the paper piecing, how I used the paper, and then I'm going to show you how I also created the crumb quilt blocks as well. So hopefully you can kind of see everything here. Here is a portion of the quilt. There is the book that I was using for this project. And it is an old book. I don't even know if it's still available, but it's Miss Rosie's Floral Quilts. Carrie Nelson is the gal she's the author of this book. It's a leisure arts book. There are 7 projects in it. They're all paper piece projects. So maybe if you Google that on Amazon, and I'll see if I can find it and put a link in the description box below in case you're interested in acquiring this. Sometimes it's available on Amazon or some old, maybe some Goodwill thrift shops might have it as well. But this is the paper piece pattern that you're going to be using. And whenever you have paper piece patterns, they often give you the sizes that you need to cut from your different fabrics that will actually cover each area so that you can ensure that you're getting coverage of the entire area. And then you trim that away once it's been sewn on to the foundation paper. The thing is, there's going to be some remnants that are waste, but they don't need to go to waste. In fact, this is all waste that I had after trimming things away. However, what I was able to do was to put together a lot of these in some little wonky triangles, half square triangles, I should say, and I'm going to use it to create another crumb quilt using the same fabrics. So none of this is going to go to waste. There might be a small amount that I might be able to put in my pet pillow for stuffing, but otherwise all of it will be used either in this paper piece project or in the crumb quilt. So with the paper pieced patterns, they give you the yardage and then they tell you how to cut up squares that will cover, or rectangles that will cover the elements in the pattern of their paper piece project. So here it's asking me to cut 404 rectangles that are 3 3/4 by 6 3/4. So I have that done with all of the different fabrics, and I have them sorted in pairs of 4 actually, because I'm using the 4 matching larger squares around the outside. It also is asking me to cut 224 of the 3 by 5 inch rectangles, and so I have them here, and they're going to be used for the smaller ones. So that is what I have cut up, and I'm ready to go. And then I've also copied this paper, or this pattern, excuse me, onto paper. And this was recycled paper from where I used to work many, many years ago. And so it was paper that was going in the recycle bin. And so I used it to make copies of this pattern. Now, because it's copy paper, it is a little thicker, and so you definitely need to make sure that your stitch length is shorter, which will help to perforate this paper when you're removing the paper after the block is finished. If you use some regular paper-pieced paper that you can purchase, it's more of a soft, almost like a newspaper print. That's something that works beautifully. I've purchased that from EQ8. I love it. That comes in packages, and you can run it through your copy machine, and it just perforates beautifully. So that's something to keep in mind, and you might have your own favorite option. If you do, put a link below to let us know what it is that you like to use for copying your paper-pieced patterns. So I'm going to use one of these to create a block, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to take you to the sewing machine and show you how we're going to accomplish that. Here is my pattern, and I have 3 pieces of fabric. I'm going to start in the center, and it's all numbered. So you're going to start with number 1, and then you work on number 2 and number 3. This larger fabric will cover number 3. This fabric here, which was a leftover one, will cover number 2. And this one here is going to cover number 1. And of course, we're going to work from the back of the paper. So what you're going to want to do is create some creases on these lines so that you can easily see on the back where we want to place our pieces of fabric. I am using here an add a quarter ruler. It's just a small one. I think you can get these larger as well. But this really helps me not only for creating the creases, but it has a ridge here, a 1/4 of an inch ridge. And I am not sure if you're going to be able to see that or not, but trust me, there's a ridge there, and it just really helps when we go to trim. And you'll see what I mean by that when I get to the trimming stage. But the first thing I'm going to do is crease on the lines all the way around number 1, which is a triangle. So I'm lining up that ruler on that line, and I'm going behind the paper and bringing it up with my fingernail and just creating a ridge there. So on the back, you can see that triangle. There's a triangle there that has the crease. And that's where I'm going to start to lay my first piece of fabric. What I'm also going to do is put just a little bit of a dab of glue, just so it kind of stays right where I want it. I'm going to center this so that it covers all edges. I have kind of a 1/4 of an inch down here. I can feel the actual crease on the paper. There's my glue, and it definitely covers the entire triangle. I can feel the triangle under my fingers. That is where the crease is. So now what I'm going to do is flip this over, turn this back, and this is where I'm going to use this 1/4 of an inch ridge right there. I'm going to lay that up against the paper, and I'm going to trim away. Whoops, I need to get my little mat over here. Need this. Okay, now I'm going to trim away. I'm going to make sure that nothing has moved here. Okay. So I folded back on this line. That will become a crumb piece of fabric. I'm going to move over around to the other side here. I'm going to fold this back on that line. It's already been creased, so I'm just folding it back. And I'm getting rid of some of these excess pieces. So this will also be crumbs, and I will add that to my crumb pile. It will be created into a new quilt. So now, number 1 is on there and ready to go. And I just put a tiny little bit of glue in there, not a whole lot. You don't need much, just a little bit to keep it steady. So now that I have number 1, which is this triangle on here, I am now going to attach the fabric for number 2, which will go behind this triangle. You could, if you wanted to, go ahead and make another crease just to ensure that everything is going to cover all the way around that number 2. But I'm simply going to flip it over, and number 2 is right here, and I'm going to take this piece of fabric. I am going to place it right here. I am going to place 2 pins in this fabric on each end just to help keep it secure. I know that my crease line is right under my finger here, so I definitely have a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. beyond that, and I have a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance beyond this side. Now I'm going to bring it over to my machine, and I'm going to start sewing from that line to this line. And I have reduced my stitch length to 1.8, and that will help me as I'm perforating and removing this paper later. It will come off so much easier. So I'm going to start sewing there and here. When I bring it over to my machine, make sure you check that nothing has flipped. That can happen very easily as you're bringing it to the machine. The fabric can flip underneath and you might be sewing it incorrectly. All right, so I'm going to put my needle down and it's right where I want it. And now I'm going to go ahead and just stitch right on that line. Get rid of this pin as well. And you can certainly backstitch if you choose to. I am not in this case, but you can certainly do that. All right, I'm getting rid of that. So this one is done. I am going to finger press it right now. I do a lot of finger pressing as I'm going through this. You can certainly use your machine or your iron if you have your iron set up really close, but I've finger pressed it. Now I want to trim away the excess around number 2. So bring it back to the front, which is where the pattern is. The fabric is actually added to the back side and the pattern is on the front side. Now I'm going to make sure that crease is right there on that triangle. Fold this back. Take that ridge, line it up on that fabric, trim away this excess. This is going to be a crumb fabric now. And then I need to come around to this side and do the same. And it's already been creased, so I'm just folding it back. Now I'm going to make sure that this is just a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. This tiny thing can go in my pet pillow for stuffing. And so that is how I'm using everything. All right, so number 1 and 2 are finished. Now we are going to add number 3 to this side. And the 3 is a larger triangle, as you can see. We are simply going to place this larger rectangle on here. Again, I am going to take my 2 pins, pin on each end. I've matched up this top seam allowance with the seam allowance underneath. So that's all good to go. Flip it over, and I'm going to stitch from here to here. And I'll bring my fabric around and I'll trim away the excess. Let's go to the machine and stitch. So I brought my pattern over. I've made sure that nothing is folded. Sometimes it can accidentally flip under. So just always check before you start sewing. It's much easier to check beforehand than to have to rip that all out. So I've lined up my needle on that point there, and I'm going to stitch across, stitching right on the line. I'm going to remove this pin here so it's not in my way. I am stopping right at that point and trimming away this. So now number 3 is done, or at least it's sewn, and now I am finger pressing this. So it's been finger pressed, and now I can trim away the excess. So I'm going to flip it to the front, which is where the pattern is. Make sure everything is laying properly. Now I'm going to crease on this side of line 3. There we go. I'm going to butt up my little add a 1/4 ruler there. Get rid of this excess. This will become a crumb piece. Come around to the opposite side here and make a crease there. You could actually go through and crease all of your lines before you get started. I just kind of do it as I go, whatever works best for you. And then there's another crumb piece. And now we have 1, 2, and 3. These are finished. Now we're going to go to number 4, and then 5, and then 6. And what I'm going to do is find the fabrics that I need for these. I'm going to use 4 of the same fabrics for these quarters. It's kind of a square and a square and a square is what we're creating here. I'll get those fabrics and I'll be right back. For number 4, 5, and 6, I am using this pink fabric, and these are the 3-inch by 5-inch squares. And so each of these are going to be placed on there. So what I'm going to do is, number 4 is right behind here. I am simply going to line up these right sides together, and I'm putting every one of these rectangles right sides together when I get it ready for sewing. I am matching up these seam allowances here, putting a pin on this side, putting a pin on this side, and now I can take it to the machine and sew from here to there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Again, making sure nothing has flipped over on you, because that happens so often. I line up my needle, start sewing. Again, I'm at a 1.8 stitch length so that it's a smaller stitch length, and it will perforate so much easier when I need to remove all this paper. All right, so there's number 4. Paper press, or excuse me, finger press that. Now we're going to go and cut out the excess fabric. Here we go. There is number 4. Let's go ahead and finish creasing all the way across that. So that's one side of the triangle for number 4. This will be a crumb piece. And here is the other side of the triangle for number 4. There's another crumb fabric. They'll go in my crumb pile. So I've got 4 done, and now I can work my way around. It's a really simple paper piece pattern. It's just so easy. Again, we'll put pins here on both sides. I've lined it up right sides together with that seam allowance. I'm going to take it to the machine and sew from here to here, just like I did number 4. And I'm going to continue with 4, 5, and 6. And I'll get that done, and I'll show you what that looks like. Here is 4, 5, and 6 done and trimmed. Now I can get ready to do 8, 9, 10, and 11. I guess I did 4, 5, 6, and 7, and now I can do 8, 9, 10, and 11, which is the outer 4. And so I'll get that done here. These were the leftover crumb pieces that I trimmed away, so they will all get used. I also wanted to make sure that you're aware I'm having a free Zoom UFO sew-along on Friday night. It is August 16. It's actually Friday afternoon and Friday night. I'm offering it twice that day. There are details below in the description box. You can go out to my website under the courses, go to my store, and then go down to the courses, or even just go to my blog, which shares the information. And you can register for the free Zoom class and grab your UFO and let's get some work done on our UFOs on Friday. The registration link will give you a PDF and a confirmation email so that you can have all the details you need, and you'll have the Zoom link so that you can automatically get signed on Friday. So make sure you go out to my registration site there on my website, either in my store under my courses or on my blog. So just check that out, quiltingwithlori.com. It's out there in a couple of different places. You'll be able to find it there. And I hope to see you on Friday with your UFOs that you need to get finished. So let's get some sewing done. So now I'm going to continue doing this exact same process using larger square or rectangles, actually, that will go all the way around these areas here. And once I sew them on, I'll put them on in the same fashion, trim up the excess, do the same thing over here, trim up the excess. Then I will have a complete block as you see here. So there is a complete missile weight block. It's just a really fun and such a simple block. Very simple pattern. It's a great way to learn to paper piece if you haven't already tried this. It's a lot of fun. Now I want to show you what I've done with the crumbs and how I'm putting those together. This is a project that I'm going to be working on Friday at the UFO Zoom. So hopefully you'll join me and you'll see the progress that I'm making as I go. All right, I brought some of my crumbs here for you to take a peek at. Some of these crumbs I put together in some wonky little square in a square blocks, if you will. Some of them I've put together in wonky little flying geese units. And I can continue working with these, either putting them together in strips and then sewing them together, or maybe add strips around them. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do at this point, but here's a couple of them that I put together. I could sew it like that as a square in a square, or I could flip it around and sew it like this, and then it will be flying geese units. So there's so much you can do. Here's a really strange looking piece that I've added. There were some of these oddball shapes that I ended up with, so I'm using those, and I could maybe add this on there, and I could just keep growing a block. I'm still thinking about what size and shape I am going to make with all of these. I may put the whole thing together just however it will fit. I might make up certain size blocks, but I just wanted you to see you can absolutely use up all those leftover pieces and make crumbs. So a bunch of these here are wonky little square in a squares. I started out by just sewing them together, and you'll see a few more here I've just sewn together, and then eventually I put them together into an actual block. So I wanted you to see this wonky little block that I started. I've just continued sewing together the units, the half square triangles. Some of them are square in a square. Some of them are, that's a square in a square. These are like the flying geese units. I've got one added on the end. Now what I'm going to do is take this section and I'm going to add it to this end. And of course, I'm going to make a straight seam. Whenever you're working with crumb piecing, always make sure you're sewing in straight seams so that you can trim away excess and you don't get some funny little bumps inside your block. So I'm going to go ahead and quick stitch this. All right, here we go. And then I will just trim away some of this excess seam allowance. We don't need all that fabric in our seam allowances. There we go. And I'll press that. So here is a real wonky block. So maybe I'll use this as my inspiration for creating the rest of the blocks for my crumb quilt block using all the waste pieces from my paper piece project. And join me on Friday, if you can, for my free Zoom UFO sew-along. Check out the description box below for the link and the information on how you can register and get that Zoom link. And I look forward to seeing you all there. Let's get a lot of sewing done on Friday.